Hello, everyone. Good to be with you. Thanks to the creators of Ghibli films over at Ghibli Studio, I'm now able to meet with you along with my neighbor Totoro. So on behalf of Totoro and myself, hello. The goal of this video for today is to focus on where you guys have been with regard to Macbeth in Act 2 specifically, and to try to provide a framework for you for Act 3. By now, hopefully, we're able to feel a little bit more comfortable, like we're on a bike with training wheels, Shakespeare training wheels, and now with a little bit of experience. Hopefully, it's not feeling as burdensome as perhaps it did at the beginning. So I owe you guys a video from last week anyways. So in your comments in our discussion, many of you were talking about how the margin notes were really helpful, and also these videos. And so here's one for today, just to kind of orient our brain. Again, just to encourage you, the audiobook is there, use it. But let's get into today's lesson. I'm gonna share my screen with you. So before we get too far into Act 3 of Macbeth, really the climax of all Shakespeare's plays happen in Act 3. You would think it's the death of Duncan, but it's not quite there. But in order to really understand just what's going on in the mind of both Lady Macbeth and Macbeth, I want to take you guys back to The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. It's linked on our calendar page. So before you go any further, treat yourself, maybe light a candle, I don't know, have, I don't know what you would have in terms of a beverage. Keep a glass of cold water close by because it's an intense one. But in order to understand kind of just this mindset that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth enter in really for the rest of the play, I want to encourage you guys to go back and give this another listen to. Sorry, it's not happening on Halloween, which is a great time to listen to a recording of The Telltale Heart, but go back and do it and then come back here. So hit the pause button now, and I'll see you in about 15 minutes. And we're back. So welcome back. You got put into the mind of a killer, and one of the impacts that can happen of someone who is uncomfortable killing is this thing that we call paranoia. And in that story, he ends up going insane because he hears the beating of the man's heart that he's buried beneath his floorboards. Now, the man is not really, this is not a zombie story. It's really the beating of the heart is what is inside of the killer himself in this case. And so anyway, more on that as we go a little bit further in today's lesson, but let's get back to it. So I can't iterate enough the importance of not just reading the book cold. Some of you are using the audiobook, emphasis on some. The numbers still aren't very high or high at all. So it does continue to worry me. But to go back to Sir Ian McKellen, a Shakespearean actor and a Hollywood actor, just a film star, I don't think people should bother to read Shakespeare. They should see him in the theater. Reading just reduces him to an examination subject. So I'm going to bring you guys back to this, the different Shakespeare films that I've talked about, different Macbeth films that I've talked about. Those are available to you. This is the ideal one. In Act 2 especially, you guys were introduced to this character. He basically is in charge of opening the door and protecting. He's the gatekeeper. He's known as the porter, but he's drunk. And there's actually a lot of humor in that scene where even if you don't understand the words of Shakespeare, listening to them or watching the porter perform, you get it. And that's one of the fun things that Shakespeare does in his tragedies is he combines just sheer panic, paranoia, fear, dread, and humor like on the same page. And that's one of the charms of Shakespeare as a writer. It's not all dark. There are these moments of real humor and humor with a lot of depth at the same time. But anyway, I'm just bringing you guys back to this resource. If you can get access to it, then really would encourage you to do so. But the end of Act 2 really just is the focus on these two. We actually get to see Lady Macbeth and Macbeth together for the very first time. He's written her a letter saying, "Hey, I survived. I'm the Thane of Cawdor or Glamis now, and also of Cawdor, and oh, there are these witches that told me these things before I knew them myself, and they prophesied my what would be happening in the future. And by the way, sweetie, they also prophesied that I would be king of Scotland. Uh, and so Lady Macbeth gets this news. She gets it in a letter. And it's interesting when he shows up and they see each other, they have an embrace and they're excited to see each other, but it's quickly down to business. All right, how are we going to get power? How are you going to overthrow Duncan? How is he going to die? This and that. And Lady Macbeth even says this. We get this deep look into her character. I fear he as in her husband. This is when she's reading the letter. She says, I fear he is too full of the milk of human kindness. In other words, I'm afraid that my husband is too nice in order to do what needs to be done in order for him to ascend the throne and he gets to become king and I get to become queen. He is too nice of the milk. And the milk is important. Again, we talked about this issue of Lady Macbeth not being maternal at all. And of course, mother's milk is one of the most nutritious, one of the most caring forms of food that a mother can offer their child. Or but Lady Macbeth doesn't have that, and we see her inner world here. Which, speaking of inner world, one of the things I just briefly wanted to mention, this whole idea of soliloquies. No, we do not share our inner minds with the world around us. We don't share our inner thoughts, our deepest thoughts, just by talking them out loud. But that's how we get into these characters' minds. That's also how we see their evolution into this world of more paranoia as a result of their decision to kill not just their king, but also a friend. King Duncan is there because they are friends. He is comfortable in their home. You can assume that they've spent time with each other in the past. There's a familiarity between Lady Macbeth and King Duncan and his men, not just with her husband. And so there's this huge violation that has occurred when they decide that they're going to kill a friend, someone who trusts them, in their own home of all places, not on a battlefield, but in their own home. So let's come back to Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. So one of the things that you need to understand too, when it comes to Macbeth, as a warrior, he's not kind. We're told, he's described before we even meet him, that he cuts a guy from the nave to the chop. So what that means exactly is he took his sword, took it to an enemy, and just basically cut him in half, from the groin all the way to the mouth. That's what that means. So Macbeth is not a stranger to blood. He is not afraid of blood, but there's a difference. He's on the battlefield fighting an enemy in honor of a king and his homeland, not killing a friend. So that's the key difference. It's not just about killing, it's about who you're killing and why you're killing them. So what's interesting in this scene in Act 2, Macbeth sees this floating dagger, and the question is, wait, is he hallucinating? Is he going mad? Well, the answer is yes and no. Because remember, who is probably responsible for Macbeth having these hallucinations? This takes us back to the three weird sisters. Remember, they're the ones that are intentionally causing mischief. But before I go any further, I also put a link up for you to see a film clip of Sir Ian McKellen performing this scene in Macbeth, because he does such a great job. And yes, there's some like weird heavy breathing, but it just gives you a sense of what is happening in his mind as he's deciding whether he is going to take this dagger and kill his friend and his king, or whether he is not. So hit the pause button, go watch the clip. It's very, very brief. It's just under 3 minutes, and I'll meet you back here. Welcome back. All right, so let's get back to it. So Macbeth is told by the weird sisters that he's going to become king. That's a problem for him because he already has a king, one that loves him, one that cares about him. And also that king has a son who, if the king dies, it would be the oldest son that would take the throne. That's how it worked then. And so this is a shot that you'll notice, again, just it really captures the relationship between Duncan and Macbeth. They are friends. They are friends. Macbeth isn't deciding to kill an enemy in his home. He's killing someone that he's fought for, that he's risked his life for, that he's spent who knows how long with. And of course, he ends up sneaking into Duncan's room in his own home and kills his king. The blood of an innocent, by the way. Duncan is not wrong Macbeth in any way, and we see this is what's causing the struggle for Macbeth is, how can I do this? This is the whole question. Is this a dagger I see before me? Do I take it or do I not? And it's important to mention that sleeping right next door to King Duncan is his sons, actually, Malcolm. I think Lennox is the other son's name. He's much more minor than Malcolm. And they're there. while their dad is being killed. Again, they have no reason to feel afraid that their lives are under any potential harm just because they're in a friend's home. Lady Macbeth and Macbeth's home is the home of a friend. Um, but there's some humor, although it's very dark here, where Macbeth does the deed. He kills Duncan with the dagger. But what's funny slash not funny is he comes back out to talk to Lady Macbeth holding the dagger. Remember, he's supposed to take the dagger, the murder weapon, and distance himself as far away from possible. Now, I've never gone to murdering school. I don't know all the tricks of the trade to become a professional murderer. But what I do know is you do want to distance yourself from a murder weapon. That's the very basic. That's successful murder class 101. Get rid of the murder weapon. Well, he not only comes back with a murder weapon, he has blood all over his hands. Remember, he's supposed to smear all that and leave the dagger on the body of the servants because they're trying to pin it on the servants that they got too drunk, they didn't know what they were doing, and they killed King Duncan, only to realize when they awoke, oh shoot, I'm really hungover, and why is King Duncan dead? Oh wait, I did it. And so anyway, they successfully pin it on the servants of King Duncan, but Macbeth still has traces of evidence all over him. And this is an image of Lady Macbeth like, honey, what are you doing? You were terrible at this. We need to get you cleaned up, and you should be in bed. You should not look like you've been up killing somebody in your home. And so we see who has a stomach for murder more in Act Two. That Lady Macbeth really has her eye on the prize. Is way more focused, and Macbeth we see is dealing with the outcome of actually killing somebody, killing an innocent. She's the one that grabs the daggers from him. She takes him back inside, puts him on the servants. But in this scene, in this act, we get this deep look at Lady Macbeth as a character. We already mentioned that she lacks maternal instinct. She even prays to spirits. She even prays, unsex me here. In other words, take all my womanliness away. I want to be brutal. I want to be able to do what is necessary to rise in power. I want to get rid of all of my caring instinct, all of my maternal instinct, all of my compassion. That goes away. She's essentially praying for all of that to go away, which is interesting because normally, oftentimes, if people are praying about compassion, usually they're asking for more of it. But Lady Macbeth is the exact opposite. She's like, get it away from me. And so anyway, she's frustrated with her husband because he is clearly not feeling good about what he's doing. He's hallucinating, seeing daggers. Obviously, he grabs it. And again, we can pin that on the witches because part of the mindset of someone who has murdered an innocent is the result of paranoia. And so it is possible that this dagger that Macbeth is seeing floating, that he is just hallucinating it, but it's also possible that these witches are the ones that put it there just to get him moving in the direction. Because really, what are they after? They're wanting to cause mischief. And so Macbeth becomes the killer. He kills his king, but over time he becomes more and more paranoid, and that's where the telltale heart comes in. This is why I wanted you to revisit this wonderful short story, because it captures what happens to you when you break this vow of protecting innocence, when you actually kill an innocent. This takes us back to my reference to Christian Bale and The Machinist, of just the body, the mind deteriorating over time because of killing an innocent. So as you get into Act 3 itself, we start seeing the deterioration of both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Here they are in their kingly and queenly robes, and just look at the expressions on their face. These are not people who are enjoying their new status as king and queen. Look at this one. I mean, even look at Macbeth's hands. There's just dirt under his nails. He's very sweaty. They just do not look comfortable. Here's another image from the same scene. That is not the look of a man who's doing well, especially well from a psychological perspective. And remember, in the background, the witches prophesied that Banquo's sons would be king, and Banquo is still very much alive. And he actually is invited to join Macbeth at a banquet that he's throwing as king. He's throwing a banquet with him and all of his friends, and Banquo actually can't go, and he tells Macbeth why. But remember, they are friends, and also remember that it's Banquo's sons that have been prophesied to become king as well, which is a problem if you're Macbeth, because you're a king and you want to stay that way. You can't have multiple kings. And so Macbeth throws this party, this gathering of his friends, but Banquo's not there. And one of the reasons Banquo isn't there is he's off with his son, and Macbeth has made sure to know where Banquo is going to be because he has hired murderers to kill his friend Banquo and to kill his son. Yes, Macbeth is going even further down the murderous rabbit hole as he's now looking to kill another innocent as well as an innocent child, which is just next level stuff. But there's a problem for Macbeth is Banquo does die, but the murderers are not successful in killing his son. And at this dining ceremony, at this party that he's having with his friends, the ghost of Banquo shows up. Now, whether or not it's really Banquo's ghost or it's the witches having someone portray Banquo, we're not told, but it is Banquo's ghost that shows up, and he's all bloodied. He looks exactly as he's just been killed, and he's just looking at Macbeth. He doesn't even say anything. He just hovers, and nobody can see him there at all. So what ends up happening is Lady Macbeth watches her husband speaking out loud to someone that is not actually there. He's talking out loud. He's freaking out as he sees Banquo's ghost. And meanwhile, the rest of the guests are just kind of like, should we leave? Is the king okay? Uh, we probably shouldn't be here right now. Right? We should go. And Lady Macbeth basically has to say, honey, you need to calm down. Take a breath. There's no ghost to see. You need to really shut up because our cover as being innocent and this whole killing Duncan thing is being blown because you're freaking out. So the paranoia we see in Macbeth is coming out, and Lady Macbeth is the calming one, just like, calm down, calm down. Now, you guys wrote a psychological report about Lady Macbeth. I'm looking forward to reading it later on today. But we can definitely write one about Macbeth because he's showing these signs, like in the Telltale Heart, of real paranoia, of what happens when you break the sacred oath that indirectly we've all taken to protect innocent life, and he doesn't do that. So Act 3 is really about that. We start to see the degradation of the mind of Macbeth, and actually later on Lady Macbeth. So I'll stop there. Just wanted to give you guys some framework. I hope that helps as you make your way through the reading for this week. And again, listen to the audiobook or watch the film or the play, the Globe version, if you can get your hands on it. Until then, if you guys have questions, message me. I'll be happy to talk shop with you. Don't forget about your reading response questions as well. And I look forward to seeing you or talking to you soon. Bye for now.